Today we will talk about story named, The Christmas Miracle of Willowbrook. Chapter 1, A Snowy Evening. Willowbrook had always been a town that seemed to step straight out of a Christmas postcard. Nestled in a quiet valley, surrounded by towering pines, its cobblestone streets wound through the village like a maze of holiday cheer. In the winter, snow blanketed the rooftops, sparkling beneath the soft glow of street lamps that flickered like fireflies in the stillness. But this Christmas Eve, something felt different. The usual hum of holiday excitement in the air was missing, replaced by a quiet, almost eerie stillness that seemed to hang over Willowbrook. Evelyn Jennings pulled her scarf tighter around her neck as she walked briskly along the narrow path leading to the village square. It was only late afternoon, but the thick clouds overhead promised a long, dark night ahead. Snowflakes fell gently, clinging to her hair and shoulders as she passed the old town hall, where a few brave souls were already hanging wreaths on the front door. She had spent most of the day preparing for the Christmas festival. As the town's unofficial event planner, it was up to Evelyn to organize everything from the Christmas market to the caroling groups, all with the hope of bringing cheer to the town. This year, however, the usual excitement was subdued. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that this holiday would be unlike any other she had experienced before. As she walked, Evelyn's thoughts drifted back to the past. She had moved to Willowbrook 5 years ago, drawn by its charm and promise of a quieter life. She had lost her parents in a car accident when she was just 20, and after years of grieving, she had decided to leave the city and start fresh. Willowbrook, with its sleepy streets and welcoming community, had seemed like the perfect place to heal. But the memories still lingered, as they always did at Christmas time. It wasn't just the absence of her parents that made the holiday hard to bear, it was the empty feeling of not quite belonging. Her parents had always made Christmas magical, and without them, the sparkle of the season seemed to fade a little more each year. Even in a town like Willowbrook, filled with the warmth of close-knit families, she felt like an outsider. As she passed the town's small bakery, the smell of fresh gingerbread cookies wafted into the air. Evelyn paused for a moment, inhaling deeply. The sweet aroma always reminded her of her childhood, of baking cookies with her mom in their tiny kitchen, of decorating the house with sparkly ornaments, and of her dad playing Christmas carols on the piano. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memories flood back before shaking them off. It was too painful to dwell on the past. Evelyn. Over here. Evelyn turned at the sound of her name. Standing outside the bakery was Luke Carter, the town's carpenter. He was bundled up in a thick plaid scarf, his dark hair tousled by the wind. Luke had become a friend of sorts since she'd moved to Willowbrook, though they didn't spend much time together. He was quiet, reserved, and always seemed a little lost in his own thoughts. Like her, Luke had a past that he wasn't eager to talk about. "Hey, Luke," Evelyn said, smiling. She made her way over to him, her boots crunching on the snow-covered ground. "Are you ready for the big night?" Luke asked, his eyes glinting with a mix of excitement and concern. "Ready as I'll ever be," Evelyn replied with a sigh. "Though I don't know if the town is ready for all the events I've planned. It's been quiet around here this year." Luke nodded. "I know what you mean. People seem a little off this Christmas. Maybe it's the weather, or maybe it's just, I don't know, this year feels different." Evelyn looked up at the sky, where the clouds had darkened further, casting an ominous shadow over the village. "You're right. Something feels wrong. Like the holiday spirit is just out of reach, you know?" Luke paused, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Yeah, I feel it too. It's like everything's a little out of sync. Maybe it's just the weight of the season getting to everyone." Evelyn shook her head, still feeling the weight of those unspoken words hanging between them. "Maybe. Anyway, I'm sure once the festival starts, everyone will get into the spirit. We always do." Luke smiled faintly, but Evelyn could see the doubt in his eyes. "You're probably right," he said. "I guess it's just hard for some of us." The air between them grew heavier, and Evelyn wasn't sure how to respond. She and Luke had never really talked about their personal lives. Both of them carried a quiet sadness, an unspoken understanding of loss, but neither had ever been willing to open up to the other. Still, there was a bond between them, one that had formed over shared glances and brief conversations, a silent acknowledgement that they understood each other more than they let on. "Well," Evelyn said, breaking the silence, "I better get going. The tree lighting is in an hour, and I still have to make sure the choir is ready." Luke nodded, pulling his coat tighter against the chill. "I'll see you there. And Evelyn, don't worry. Christmas has a way of working things out." She smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Thanks, Luke. I'll see you soon." As she continued her walk to the town square, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. She wasn't sure what it was, but the air felt different. The cold seemed sharper, the snowflakes falling more erratically, as though the world was holding its breath. When she arrived at the square, the familiar sight of the towering Christmas tree greeted her. The branches were dusted with snow, and colorful lights blinked merrily along its length. A few volunteers were arranging chairs for the evening ceremony, while others hung garlands of holly on nearby lamp posts. The choir was gathered in front of the tree, rehearsing their carols. Evelyn smiled, despite herself. Maybe the magic of Christmas was still here after all, but as the clock struck 6 and the tree-lighting ceremony began, Evelyn felt an inexplicable tug at her heart. The lights blinked on, casting a soft glow over the square, but for a moment, she didn't see the usual twinkle in the villagers' eyes. They stood in silence, watching the tree in reverence, and Evelyn wondered if the magic of Christmas had truly deserted Willowbrook, or if it was just waiting for something, or someone, to bring it back. As the last of the carols echoed into the night, Evelyn caught a glimpse of something strange from the corner of her eye. A flicker of movement, just beyond the tree line, where the dark forest began. Her heart skipped a beat. There, among the trees, a soft glow appeared, a light that flickered like a distant star, bright and steady. It seemed to beckon her, drawing her attention in a way nothing else could. Intrigued, Evelyn stepped away from the crowd, her feet moving of their own accord, toward the light in the distance. And as she stepped into the shadows of the trees, Evelyn felt the first stirrings of something magical, something she couldn't quite understand, but that would soon change her life forever. Chapter 2, The Mysterious Light. Evelyn's footsteps crunched softly on the thick carpet of snow as she made her way into the woods. The light she had seen flickering just beyond the tree line was now almost gone, but it left a trail, a faint glow that danced through the trees, like a distant star that refused to be swallowed by the darkness. She had no idea why she felt compelled to follow it, or why her heart beat faster with every step she took. It didn't make sense. She had a million things to do for the festival, and yet the pull of that light seemed stronger than her sense of responsibility. The town square was behind her now, and the soft sounds of caroling faded into silence. The wind rustled through the bare branches of the trees, creating a soft whisper that filled the night air. Everything felt still and quiet, as though the world had paused to watch her go. Evelyn paused for a moment, scanning the woods around her. The snow-covered trees seemed to close in on her, their limbs twisting into strange shapes as the fading light of dusk mixed with the shadows of nightfall. She knew this forest well, she had wandered its paths many times before, taking long walks to clear her head when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. But tonight, it felt different. The trees looked darker, more imposing, and the air around her felt charged with something she couldn't explain. Then, she saw it again. The light. It flickered once more, casting a soft golden hue that illuminated a small clearing ahead. Without thinking, Evelyn walked toward it, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. The light seemed to beckon her, pulling her deeper into the forest, further away from the familiar warmth of the village. As she stepped into the clearing, Evelyn gasped. Before her stood a large, ancient oak tree, its trunk twisted and gnarled with age. The tree's roots sprawled out in every direction, creating a natural archway beneath its branches. And in the center of the arch, floating just above the snow-covered ground, was a soft, golden light. It wasn't a lantern, or a firefly, or anything ordinary. It was as though the light was alive, swirling gently in the air like a small star that had lost its place in the sky. It glowed with a warmth that was at once soothing and mysterious, casting flickering shadows on the ground beneath it. Evelyn stood frozen, her breath caught in her chest. She had never seen anything like this before. The light seemed to pulse, slowly at first, like it was breathing, and Evelyn couldn't help but reach out toward it. As her hand drew closer, the light brightened, and for a moment, she could feel the warmth of it, like the first rays of sunlight on a chilly morning. Then, in the blink of an eye, the light began to fade. It didn't vanish entirely, but it dimmed significantly, as though it was retreating into the very earth beneath her feet. "Wait," Evelyn gasped, taking a step forward. "Don't go." Her voice, though soft, seemed to carry in the silence of the forest. She felt silly, but something in her soul begged her to follow the light, to understand what it was, to know why it had appeared here, tonight. As if responding to her unspoken plea, the light flickered again, brighter this time, and then slowly moved toward the base of the oak tree. Evelyn's heart raced as she watched the light hover over the snow-covered ground before slowly fading out of sight. For a long moment, there was silence, utter, Complete silence. Evelyn stood still, staring at the spot where the light had just been. Her mind raced. Could it have been a trick of the wind, or some strange reflection from the nearby streetlights? No, this felt different. There was something magical about it, something beyond explanation. It wasn't natural, but it didn't feel frightening either. It felt important. As though she was meant to see it. She knelt down and ran her fingers through the snow beneath her, searching for any clue as to what had just happened. She found nothing but the cold earth and the stillness of the forest. "Am I losing my mind?" she muttered to herself, pulling her hand away from the ground. But deep down, she knew she wasn't imagining things. The light had been real. And whatever it was, it had led her here. The sound of a twig snapping behind her made Evelyn jump, her heart leaping into her throat. She spun around, expecting to see someone, but the clearing was empty. There was no sign of movement, no sound but the soft whisper of the wind. She exhaled a shaky breath, trying to calm her nerves. "Hello?" she called into the darkness, her voice a little louder than she intended. No answer. The forest remained still. Maybe it was the wind, or an animal scurrying through the underbrush. She tried to convince herself that nothing unusual had happened, that it was all just a figment of her imagination. But as she glanced one last time at the spot where the light had been, a strange thought crossed her mind. Maybe she wasn't meant to find the light at all. Maybe it had found her. The thought unsettled her, but she couldn't shake it. She stood there for a moment longer, unsure of what to do next. Part of her wanted to stay in the clearing, to see if the light would return, but the rational part of her, the part that had always been practical, urged her to return to the village, to the festivities waiting for her. After a moment of hesitation, she turned to leave. The path back to town felt different now, darker somehow, as if the forest had closed in behind her. She quickened her pace, her footsteps light on the snow, but still the feeling lingered. She couldn't explain it, but she felt as though something important had just happened. Something that would change everything. As she approached the edge of the woods, the town square was just visible through the trees, its lights twinkling in the distance. But before she stepped back into the warmth of the village, Evelyn paused one last time, her eyes scanning the shadows. And there it was again, the faint glow. Far off, near the edge of the trees, a light flickered once more. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat, and before she could think twice, she turned back toward the forest, her steps quick and purposeful. This time, she would follow the light until it led her to the answers she didn't even know she was looking for. Chapter 3, The Keeper of the Light. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she retraced her steps into the dark woods. The light ahead shimmered once again, just beyond the tree line, tantalizing and elusive. She hesitated for a moment at the edge of the clearing, glancing back over her shoulder toward the distant glow of the village. The warm, festive lights felt so far away now, almost like a dream. It was as though the forest had pulled her into its embrace, and she couldn't quite shake the feeling that it was guiding her toward something important. The light pulsed again, this time a steady, rhythmic glow that seemed to beckon her forward. She felt a strange, inexplicable pull, as though it was calling her name. She couldn't explain it, but every part of her felt drawn to it. Her feet moved of their own accord, crunching softly on the snow, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. As Evelyn drew closer, the trees seemed to part before her, creating a narrow path that led straight to the heart of the forest. The light, now brighter and clearer than ever, hovered just above the ground, illuminating the snow with a soft, golden hue. It wasn't a lantern or a torch, and it didn't flicker like a candle. It was as if the light had a life of its own, pulsating and shifting with an energy that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. Evelyn stepped forward cautiously, her heart beating faster with every step. She reached out a hand, drawn to the light like a moth to a flame. As her fingers neared it, the light brightened, enveloping her in a soft warmth that melted away the chill of the night. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth wash over her, feeling a sense of peace settle in her soul. When she opened her eyes again, the light had changed. It was no longer just a glowing orb in the air, but a figure, soft and ethereal, like something out of a dream. At first, Evelyn thought it might be a trick of the light or her imagination, but as the figure came into focus, she realized it was real. Standing before her was a tall, slender figure dressed in robes that shimmered like the stars themselves. The figure's features were indistinct, as if the light itself was shaping them, but there was something undeniably regal about it, something ancient and wise. The figure stepped closer, and Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear. There was something comforting about its presence, as though it had always been here, waiting for her. Who are you?" Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible in the stillness of the forest. Her breath caught in her throat as she waited for an answer, unsure if she would even get one. The figure's head tilted slightly, as if studying her. Then, with a voice that was soft but carried a depth beyond human comprehension, it spoke. "I am the keeper of the light," it said, its voice like the wind through the trees, gentle yet commanding. "And you, Evelyn, have been chosen." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Chosen? For what? She felt the weight of the words settle in her chest, but before she could ask, the figure continued. "The light you see before you is not of this world. It comes from a place beyond time and space, a place where the wishes of the heart are made real. It has come to guide you, for there is a task you must fulfill." Evelyn took a step back, trying to process the words. A task? She wasn't sure what to think. She had been following this light out of curiosity, but now it seemed as though her steps had led her into something far greater than she had imagined. "What task?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't understand." The figure's gaze softened, and it took another step closer to her. The light surrounding it pulsed gently, as if to comfort her. "The task is one of great importance," the keeper replied. "The balance of light and dark in this world is shifting, and only someone with a pure heart can restore it. You must journey to the heart of the forest, where the ancient tree stands. There, you will find the key to the future of your village, and perhaps even the world." Evelyn's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the keeper's words. The heart of the forest? The ancient tree? She had heard stories growing up, tales of a magical tree hidden deep within the woods, said to hold the secrets of the universe. But those stories were just that, stories, told by the elders to entertain children and keep them out of the forest. They weren't real. Were they? "But why me?" Evelyn asked, still struggling to understand. "Why am I the one chosen for this?" The keeper's eyes, though featureless, seemed to pierce through her, as if it could see into her very soul. "Because, Evelyn, you are more than you know. Your heart is pure, and your spirit is strong. You have always cared for this village, for its people, and for the land. But your journey is not just about saving the village, it is about finding your true self." Evelyn felt a lump form in her throat. Her mind was spinning, but she didn't feel afraid. She felt something else. Something she couldn't describe. It was as though the keeper's words resonated with something deep within her, a part of her she had never fully understood until now. "I don't know if I can do this," Evelyn admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just a simple village girl. I'm not a hero." The keeper's light flickered gently, as if it was smiling. "Everyone has the capacity for greatness, Evelyn. You need only to believe in yourself." The figure extended its hand toward her, and as it did, the light around it grew brighter. "Come, I will show you the way." Evelyn hesitated for a moment, her mind racing with doubts and questions, but in her heart, she knew she couldn't turn back. There was something she was meant to do, something she had to discover. And this was the path that had been set before her. She reached out and took the keeper's hand. The moment her fingers brushed the ethereal light, she felt a surge of energy pass through her. It was like the very air around her crackled with power, and her heart raced in response. The light around her grew even brighter, and she felt as though she were being lifted off the ground, her feet no longer touching the snow. For a brief, dizzying moment, Evelyn lost all sense of time and space. She was no longer in the forest, no longer in the cold night air. She was somewhere else entirely, somewhere beautiful and strange. And she knew, without a doubt, that her journey was just beginning. Chapter 4, The Path to the Heart. The air around Evelyn was alive with energy. As she held the keeper's hand, the world around her seemed to melt away, replaced by swirling colors and faint whispers of ancient voices. The landscape shifted, turning from the familiar snowy forest into something entirely foreign. The ground beneath her feet was no longer snow-covered, but soft, warm earth, rich with the scent of pine and earth after a rainfall. She took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh, fragrant air, but when she exhaled, she realized something startling. There was no chill in the breeze, no bite to the air. It was warm, comforting, as though she had stepped into another world altogether. Her breath slowed, and her mind, previously filled with doubt and fear, began to clear. She felt calm, peaceful, even. The keeper's hand was no longer glowing with a bright, blinding light, but had softened into a pale luminescence that illuminated the path before them. Without a word, the figure began walking forward, guiding Evelyn along the path that wound through a forest unlike anything she had ever seen. Trees with wide, twisting trunks and leaves that shimmered like emeralds towered above them, their branches humming with a soft, melodic sound. The ground was littered with vibrant flowers that glowed faintly, their petals swirling in the breeze as though alive. "Where are we?" Evelyn asked, her voice filled with awe. "This place. It's nothing like the village. Is this the heart of the forest?" The keeper did not answer immediately. Instead, it walked a few steps ahead, allowing Evelyn to catch up, her footsteps light and sure on the new terrain. Then, it spoke, its voice echoing softly in the stillness of the forest. "This is the realm of the ancients," it said, its voice like a whisper on the wind. "A place between worlds, where time and space intertwine. It is not bound by the same rules you know. The heart of the forest is close now, but before you reach it, you must understand its true power." Evelyn nodded, even though she wasn't entirely sure she understood. The realm of the ancients. It sounded like a place from legend, a place where magic and mystery were real, and where the very essence of the world was preserved. She could feel that power now, thrumming in the ground beneath her feet, in the air she breathed. It was both humbling and thrilling at once. As they continued along the path, Evelyn noticed something strange. There were no animals here. No birds in the trees, no rustling in the underbrush. The forest was eerily silent, save for the sound of their footsteps and the soft humming of the trees. "Why is it so quiet?" Evelyn asked, a sudden thought crossing her mind. "Where are all the animals? It's too still." The keeper turned to her, its form a silhouette against the glowing trees, and for the first time, Evelyn thought she saw the faintest flicker of sadness in the figure's eyes. "The animals of this realm are not as you know them. They are spirits, guardians of the forest. They are bound to protect the balance between the realms, to ensure that no one with a heart full of greed or darkness can enter this sacred place. Only those with pure intent may pass freely. You must prove that you are worthy." Evelyn's pulse quickened at the mention of worthiness. She wasn't sure she understood what the keeper meant by that, but she felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. Had she been chosen for this task because she was truly worthy? Or had fate simply picked her at random, a girl from a village who had wandered too far into the woods? The keeper seemed to sense her hesitation. It turned back toward her, and for the first time, the figure spoke with a tone that was not just comforting but strong and firm. "You are worthy, Evelyn. You have been chosen because of the purity of your heart. But to understand what lies ahead, you must first know the truth of your purpose here. You are not just a girl from a village, you are a beacon of hope. And you have a power within you that you have yet to discover." Evelyn's mind raced as the keeper's words settled in. What power? She wasn't special. She had never done anything extraordinary, never had any sort of ability that stood out. She had always been content with her quiet life, tending to the fields, helping in the village, never seeking anything beyond what was before her. But what if the keeper was right? What if there was something inside her that she had yet to unlock? Something powerful, something capable of changing the world? The path ahead began to narrow, and Evelyn realized they were nearing the center of the realm. The trees seemed to part slightly, revealing a clearing up ahead. A glowing stone, large and flat like an altar, sat in the center of the clearing, its surface covered in ancient symbols that pulsed with light. Evelyn stopped, her eyes widening as she took in the sight before her. The clearing was breathtaking, like a sacred space untouched by time, as though it had remained hidden for centuries. The stone at the center radiated an energy that was both gentle and overwhelming, like the pulse of the earth itself. "This is it," the keeper said softly, its voice like a song in the wind. "The heart of the forest. This is where the power lies. The ancient tree is just beyond. But before you can reach it, you must face the trials of the realm." "The trials?" Evelyn asked, her voice tight with both fear and anticipation. "What do you mean?" The keeper looked at her, its glowing form flickering softly in the ethereal light. "You will face 3 challenges. Each will test your heart, your courage, and your spirit. Only when you pass these trials will you be granted access to the heart of the forest and the key to restore balance." Evelyn swallowed, her throat dry. 3 challenges? She wasn't sure she was ready for this. She didn't know if she could pass whatever tests the realm had in store for her. But one thing was certain, there was no turning back now. She had come too far. The keeper raised its hand, and the air around them seemed to hum with energy. A soft, ethereal light began to rise from the ground, swirling and coalescing into 3 distinct shapes. The first was a mirror, the second, a labyrinth of shifting walls, and the third, a door that glowed with an otherworldly light. "These are the trials," the keeper explained. "Each represents a different aspect of your journey. The first trial is the trial of truth. You must face your deepest fears and confront the truth of who you are. The second trial is the trial of courage. You will face the unknown and prove that you can stand strong in the face of uncertainty. And the third trial is the trial of the heart. This will be the most difficult of all. You must open your heart fully, trusting in yourself and in the world around you. Evelyn's heart raced as she looked at the trials before her. She had always thought of herself as a simple person, someone with no great purpose. But now, standing on the threshold of this strange and magical realm, she realized that she was about to face something much bigger than herself. She wasn't just protecting her village. She was protecting something much more important, a balance that had to be maintained for the sake of the world itself. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn stepped forward, ready to face the trials ahead. There was no going back now. Chapter 5, The Trial of Truth. Evelyn stood before the mirror, its surface shimmering softly in the ethereal light of the clearing. The keeper had explained that this was the first trial, the trial of truth. As she stared into the mirror's depths, she felt a stirring in her chest, an unease that she couldn't quite explain. The mirror seemed to hum with an energy all its own, reflecting not only her physical appearance but something deeper, something hidden. "Step forward," the keeper's voice echoed from behind her. "This trial will reveal the truth within you. You must look into the mirror and face what you see. Only by embracing the truth of who you are will you pass." Evelyn took a slow, measured step forward, her heart beating faster with each movement. The cool light from the mirror bathed her face as she came closer, and for a moment, she hesitated, unsure if she was truly ready for what the mirror might show her. What truth did she have to face? She had always considered herself ordinary, just another person in a quiet village. She had never been a leader, never someone who made a difference in the world. But now, standing here, with the fate of the realm seemingly on her shoulders, she wondered if there was something more to her, something buried deep within that she had never acknowledged. Her reflection in the mirror was at first familiar, just her own face staring back at her. But then, as if some unseen force was pulling at the fabric of reality, the reflection began to shift. The soft glow from the mirror seemed to stretch and distort, and suddenly, the face staring back at her was not quite her own. The eyes in the reflection were darker, haunted by shadows, and a faint expression of sadness played across her face. Her heart pounded as she leaned closer to the mirror, her breath fogging the surface. "Who is this?" she whispered, barely able to choke the words from her throat. In an instant, the reflection in the mirror morphed again. This time, the face was older, weary, as if years of burden had been added to her shoulders. She saw herself walking alone in the village streets, her back hunched under an invisible weight, her eyes filled with doubt and uncertainty. The reflection spoke, its voice not hers, but a voice laced with sorrow. "You are afraid," the reflection said softly. "Afraid to step out from the shadows of your past, afraid to embrace your true potential. You hide behind the facade of the ordinary, content in your quiet life, unwilling to reach for something greater." Evelyn took a step back, her heart racing in her chest. The words of the reflection hit her like a blow. Was this how she truly felt? Had she been hiding from something deeper, something she had never dared to acknowledge? The reflection continued, its voice growing more insistent, its gaze piercing her very soul. "You have always been told that you are not enough. That your dreams are too big, that you will never make a difference. You have buried your own desires under layers of self-doubt, convincing yourself that you don't deserve to be anything more than what you are now. But look closely, Evelyn. The truth is staring back at you." Evelyn swallowed hard, her eyes searching the reflection, looking for some hint of the person she wanted to be. The sadness in the reflection's eyes seemed to dissolve as it softened, becoming clearer, more direct. A sense of understanding washed over her. "You are not just a girl from a village," the reflection said, its voice now gentle but firm. "You are a person of great strength. You have the heart to face the unknown, the courage to fight for what is right, and the power to change the world. You only need to see it for yourself." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes as the reflection's words struck a chord deep within her. For the first time, she truly saw herself. Not as the quiet, unsure girl from the village, but as someone capable of far more. Someone with a destiny to fulfill. The truth was not that she was ordinary, but that she had never believed in her own potential. The reflection began to fade, the image of herself dissolving into the shimmering light of the mirror, and Evelyn took a deep, steadying breath. She knew now that the path she was on was one she had always been meant to take. But she had to trust in herself, in her own strength, and accept that she was worthy of this journey. As the last remnants of the reflection faded from the mirror's surface, the hum of the trials seemed to quiet, leaving behind a peaceful silence. Evelyn looked up at the keeper, who stood watching her with a knowing expression. "You have passed the first trial," the keeper said, its voice soft but filled with approval. You have faced the truth within yourself and come to terms with what lies beneath. The next trial awaits. Evelyn nodded, her heart still racing from the encounter, but a new sense of clarity and resolve settling within her. She had faced the truth of her own fear and self-doubt, and she had overcome it. She wasn't sure what the next trial would hold, but she was ready. She had to be. The keeper gestured toward the next challenge, a labyrinth of twisting walls that seemed to pulse with an energy all their own. Now, you must face the trial of courage, the keeper said. Walk through the labyrinth, and trust in yourself to find your way. There are no shortcuts, no easy paths. Only by facing the unknown with courage will you be able to succeed. Evelyn took one last look at the mirror, her reflection now nothing more than a faint echo in her mind. She felt stronger now, emboldened by the truth she had confronted. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it head-on. With a deep breath, she stepped toward the labyrinth. Chapter 6, The Trial of Courage. The air in the labyrinth was thick with an otherworldly energy, as though the walls themselves were alive, watching Evelyn with every step she took. The keeper's voice had faded into the distance as she entered the winding maze, leaving her with nothing but the sound of her own breath and the soft rustling of her feet against the ground. At first glance, the labyrinth seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. The walls were high, covered in moss and creeping ivy, casting long shadows in the dim light that filtered down from above. The path ahead was uncertain, with branches leading off into countless directions, each one just as inviting, and as daunting, as the next. Evelyn paused at the entrance, her heart racing in her chest. The trial of courage. The keeper had spoken of it simply, but Evelyn understood the weight of those words. Courage was not just about bravery in the face of danger, it was about facing the unknown with an open heart, about trusting in herself and the choices she made. She had already overcome the trial of truth, faced the darkest corners of her own heart, and come to terms with her deepest fears. But the labyrinth? This was different. The walls seemed to press in on her, whispering doubts and uncertainties. Could she really do this? Could she really navigate the unknown and emerge victorious? But no. Evelyn couldn't allow herself to fall prey to these thoughts. She had come this far, and she wouldn't let fear dictate her path. She was stronger than she realized. She would trust in her instincts, her heart, and the courage she had found within herself. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. At first, the path was clear, leading her down a straight stretch of stone that was narrow enough for only one person to pass. The walls loomed around her, their cold, rough surfaces contrasting with the warmth of her body. There were no sounds, no other signs of life, just the rhythmic sound of her footsteps echoing off the walls. She began to wonder if she was walking in circles. Her thoughts drifted to the people she had left behind, her family, her village, her friends. Would they be proud of her? Did they even believe in her as she believed in herself? The quiet was oppressive, her thoughts too loud in the stillness. But then, she heard it. A soft whisper. Barely audible. Just on the edge of hearing. Evelyn. Her name. She stopped, frozen in place, straining to hear the voice. It was too faint to discern where it came from, but she felt it, inside her, beneath her ribs, like a pulse. She shook her head, trying to shake off the feeling. The labyrinth had a way of playing with the mind, distorting thoughts and creating illusions. She wouldn't fall for it. Taking a deep breath, she continued, turning down a narrow passageway to the left. The path curved around and opened up to a wide chamber, and Evelyn found herself staring at what appeared to be a vast pit, a deep, yawning void. The only way forward was to cross the pit, but there was no bridge, no way to traverse it that she could see. Her eyes searched frantically for some sign, some hint of how to proceed, but all she saw was the edge of the abyss, waiting. A flash of panic gripped her chest. She couldn't cross this gap, there was nothing to support her, no clear way to get across. The walls seemed to close in on her, the air thick with the tension of a challenge yet unsolved. She felt small, vulnerable, trapped. Evelyn. The whisper again, but louder this time. She spun around, eyes wild, but there was no one there. The air was still, the labyrinth as silent as ever. Don't be afraid, the voice continued, this time clearer, stronger. It sounded almost like her own voice, but not quite. There was something ethereal, otherworldly about it. Her breath quickened as the voice echoed through the chamber, and for a moment, she was overwhelmed by the feeling of being watched, of being judged by some invisible presence. She was alone, isolated in the vastness of the labyrinth. She realized then that the trial of courage wasn't just about facing external challenges, it was about confronting the inner voice, the fear, the doubt, and the uncertainty that could hold her back. The pit before her was a symbol of the vast unknown, an abyss that could swallow her whole if she let it. But Evelyn understood now. The true courage wasn't in avoiding the void, in walking away from the challenge, it was in facing it head-on. With a deep breath, Evelyn stepped to the edge of the pit, feeling her heart beat faster, her body tense with the challenge. The voice was there again, urging her forward. "You are capable," it whispered. "You've already come so far. This trial is a reflection of all that you fear, all that you doubt about yourself. But you must take the step. Trust in what you've learned." For a long moment, she stood still, staring into the abyss, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. The labyrinth had been a test of her courage all along, and now she understood that the true path was one she had to choose. She couldn't wait for someone to show her the way, she had to walk it herself. Without another moment of hesitation, she stepped forward. The ground beneath her feet shifted, and before she could even process what was happening, she was no longer standing at the edge of the pit. Instead, she found herself on solid ground again, her surroundings unchanged but for one detail: the way forward had opened. The voice, her own voice, whispered softly in her mind, the echo of courage now resonating within her. "You have passed the trial of courage," it said. "You have faced the unknown and stepped into the darkness without fear. You have embraced your own strength." Evelyn took a moment to breathe, her hands trembling slightly from the intensity of the experience. She had made it. The trial of courage was behind her, and she had passed. Ahead of her, the labyrinth continued, but now, it no longer seemed as daunting. She had found the courage within herself to face the path, and she would keep moving forward, one step at a time. With a final look back at the chamber where the pit had once loomed, Evelyn turned to continue her journey. The next trial awaited, but she felt ready now, more than ever before. She had faced her fear, and conquered it. Chapter 7, The Heart of the Labyrinth. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she walked deeper into the labyrinth. The path had shifted again, leading her through a series of narrow corridors and unexpected turns. The maze seemed to stretch on endlessly, and with each step, the sense of time felt warped, like the very fabric of reality had begun to bend around her. Every corner she turned revealed only more twists and turns, each as unfamiliar as the last. She paused for a moment, catching her breath. The air around her was cooler now, and the dim light that had once flickered overhead was dimming further, as if the labyrinth itself was growing darker, quieter. She realized with a shiver that this wasn't just a physical journey anymore, it had become something much deeper. Something that was asking her to confront more than just the challenges of the maze. It was asking her to confront her very soul. Evelyn's thoughts swirled with doubt. Had she truly passed the trial of courage? Or had she merely been lucky? She had crossed the abyss, yes, but now the path seemed to grow even more treacherous. The walls around her seemed to close in, the shadows longer and deeper than before. The labyrinth was alive, its walls whispering, its very structure shifting with each moment. But no. Evelyn couldn't let herself falter now. She had come too far. Each trial had been a step toward something greater, something within herself she hadn't even fully realized she was capable of. She could feel it now, like a pulse deep within her chest, a quiet but persistent call to keep moving forward. The path before her widened into an open chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows. The ground was uneven, with stones jutting up at odd angles. She stepped carefully, her footfalls echoing in the eerie silence. The walls of the chamber were covered in strange carvings, ancient symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, as though they were alive, waiting for her to decipher them. Evelyn moved closer to the carvings, her fingers grazing the cold stone. She didn't understand the symbols, but somehow, she could feel their meaning deep in her bones. It was as if they were speaking to her in a language she had forgotten, a language of the heart, the soul. And then, just as she was beginning to make sense of the intricate patterns, she heard it again. The voice. Soft, distant, but unmistakable. "Evelyn," it called, and this time, it was not just her name. It was an invitation. "Come closer." She stepped back, her heart racing. Was this another trial? Another test? Or was it something else, something more personal? The air in the chamber seemed to grow thicker, the walls pressing in as if the labyrinth was testing her once again. She could feel her breath catch in her throat, the weight of the decision pressing on her. But what choice did she have? To turn away would be to deny the call she had been following all along. She had come here for a reason. The labyrinth had chosen her, and if it was asking her to step closer, then she had to. With a deep breath, she moved forward, drawn toward the center of the room where a large stone pedestal stood. Upon the pedestal rested a crystal, glowing softly with an otherworldly light. It was mesmerizing, its surface shimmering with colors Evelyn couldn't quite place, shifting and flowing like liquid fire. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool surface of the crystal. The moment her skin touched it, a surge of energy shot through her. It was as if the labyrinth itself had come alive, pulsing with a power that was both familiar and foreign at the same time. The crystal hummed, its energy vibrating through her very soul, as though it was awakening something deep within her. For a moment, she felt as though she were no longer in the labyrinth. She was somewhere else, somewhere timeless, somewhere ancient. She could feel the presence of the labyrinth, of the trials she had faced, and of the journey ahead. She understood, in that brief, fleeting moment, that the labyrinth was not just a physical place. It was a reflection of the heart, of the human soul, and of everything that one had to face in life. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, and Evelyn found herself standing in the chamber once again, the crystal cool and still in her hands. She knew, in that instant, that she had passed another trial, but it wasn't like the others. This wasn't a test of courage or truth or fear. This was something far more profound. It was a test of heart. She closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment to breathe, to absorb what had just happened. She could feel the pulse of the labyrinth still vibrating in her chest, the echoes of its ancient wisdom surrounding her. She had been given something that had awakened within her that she could not yet fully understand. But she knew it was a gift. And like all gifts, it had its purpose. The moment passed, and the labyrinth fell silent once more. The crystal in her hand seemed to pulse one last time, then faded into an ordinary stone once again. Evelyn looked around the chamber, the walls now still, the carvings now quiet. She knew what she had to do next. The path forward was clear, and with that clarity, she stepped confidently toward it. Her journey was far from over, but the labyrinth had shown her something important. The trials were not just about conquering external challenges, they were about understanding the self, about embracing what was hidden deep within. And with each trial she faced, Evelyn grew stronger, more certain of who she was, and more prepared for what lay ahead. As she moved forward, the voice spoke again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a steady, reassuring tone, as though it were guiding her through the maze. "Remember," the voice said, "the heart knows the way." Evelyn nodded, a quiet smile forming on her lips. The labyrinth had spoken, and she had listened. With that, she stepped into the next passageway, ready for whatever lay ahead. Chapter 8, The Path of Reflection. Evelyn's footsteps echoed softly through the passageway, a gentle reminder that she was not alone in this labyrinth. The eerie silence that had filled the chamber earlier seemed to follow her, but now, there was something different in the air. A quiet hum, almost like a whisper of wind, swirled around her, as if the labyrinth itself was shifting, guiding her toward something new. The walls here were different. They weren't the solid, ancient stone she had grown accustomed to. Instead, they seemed to pulse with light, shimmering like water. The air was warmer now, the coldness that had gripped her earlier replaced by a comforting warmth that wrapped around her like a soft blanket. It was as though the labyrinth, which had once seemed so vast and unwelcoming, was now embracing her, welcoming her into its deeper mysteries. She moved cautiously forward, aware that with every step, she was drawing closer to something significant, something that the labyrinth had been preparing her for all along. But what was it? What did this new part of the maze hold? She wasn't sure, but something deep inside told her that she was about to find out. As she walked, the walls around her began to change again. The light grew brighter, and the air became heavy with the scent of pine. For a moment, Evelyn thought she could hear faint whispers of music, soft and melodic, like the notes of a Christmas carol drifting through the air. It was a sound she couldn't quite place, but it felt nostalgic, comforting, like something she had heard long ago in her childhood. The passage widened, and Evelyn found herself stepping into another chamber, this one much different from the others she had encountered. The floor here was covered in a thick carpet of soft moss, and the walls were lined with large mirrors, each reflecting her image. But there was something strange about these mirrors. They didn't just reflect her appearance, they seemed to capture something more. At first, Evelyn saw only herself, her tired eyes and weary face reflected back at her. But as she stepped closer to one of the mirrors, the image changed. The reflection grew brighter, more vivid, and in it, she saw not just her own features, but flashes of moments from her past. Memories, fragments of moments she had long forgotten, flashed before her eyes. She saw herself as a little girl, sitting by a Christmas tree with her family, the soft glow of the lights twinkling in the background. She saw her mother's smile, warm and kind, as she wrapped Evelyn's hands around a steaming mug of cocoa. She saw herself running through the snow, her heart full of joy, her laughter mingling with the crisp winter air. Each mirror reflected a different memory, a different piece of her life, and with each new reflection, Evelyn felt a deeper connection to her past. But it wasn't just her childhood memories that surfaced. As she walked further into the room, she saw her teenage years, her moments of doubt and self-discovery. She saw the struggles she had faced, the moments when she had felt lost, unsure of her place in the world. And then, she saw more recent memories, her journey into the labyrinth, her fears and doubts, and her growing strength. The mirrors didn't just reflect her external appearance, they reflected the very essence of her soul, every triumph, every challenge, and every choice she had made. Evelyn stood there, staring at her reflection, her heart heavy with emotion. For the first time since entering the labyrinth, she felt truly seen, not just by the world around her, but by herself. She had spent so long hiding parts of herself, burying the painful memories and doubts, pushing them deep inside where they couldn't hurt her. But here, in this chamber of mirrors, she was forced to confront them. She couldn't run from her past any longer. The labyrinth had given her a gift, the gift of reflection. For a long moment, Evelyn simply stood there, gazing at the mirrors, taking in the full scope of her life. She didn't try to push away the sadness or the pain she saw reflected back at her. Instead, she allowed herself to feel it, to acknowledge it. She understood now that the journey she had been on wasn't just about physical challenges. It was about healing, about accepting every part of herself, the light and the dark, the joy and the sorrow. And as she stood there, lost in her thoughts, a new reflection appeared in one of the mirrors. This time, it wasn't just a memory from her past, it was a vision of her future. She saw herself standing at the edge of the labyrinth, looking out at a vast landscape, her heart full of hope. She saw herself surrounded by people who loved her, who supported her, and who would walk beside her in the days to come. The vision was fleeting, but it left a profound sense of peace within her. Evelyn realized that the labyrinth had shown her not just who she had been, but who she could become. It had shown her the power of reflection, not to dwell on the past, but to learn from it, to grow from it, and to move forward with strength and grace. With a deep breath, she turned away from the mirrors. The chamber, once so heavy with emotion, now felt lighter, more peaceful. The path ahead was clear, and she knew what she had to do next. She had learned the lesson the labyrinth was teaching her, to face herself, to embrace her past, and to step forward into her future with courage. As Evelyn took the first step toward the next passage, the soft sound of music filled the air again, this time clearer and more distinct. It was a carol, a song of hope and renewal. And for the first time, Evelyn felt a deep sense of peace, as though the labyrinth itself was singing to her, guiding her on the next leg of her journey. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced the labyrinth's trials and emerged stronger, more whole, and more ready than ever to embrace the challenges and joys that the future held. With that, Evelyn stepped forward, ready for whatever the next chapter of her journey would bring. Chapter 9, The Light Beyond the Labyrinth. The passage ahead of Evelyn was narrow, the walls pressing in on either side, but the air felt different now. There was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air, like the labyrinth itself was holding its breath. It was as though every step she took was one step closer to something monumental, something she had been unknowingly preparing for all along. As she moved forward, the light grew brighter, casting long shadows that danced against the walls. The coldness had disappeared entirely, replaced by a warmth that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the labyrinth. It was as if the entire maze had transformed, no longer a dark and foreboding place, but a sanctuary, a place of refuge and healing. The further she walked, the more she felt the presence of something, someone, guiding her. She wasn't sure who or what it was, but the feeling was undeniable. It was as if the labyrinth itself had become a living, breathing entity, watching over her, guiding her with a wisdom that went far beyond her own understanding. And then, she saw it. The end of the passage. The walls opened up to reveal a vast chamber, unlike anything she had encountered so far. It was bathed in light, the walls shimmering with a soft, golden glow that felt almost celestial. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, on which rested a small, glowing object. It was hard to make out from a distance, but Evelyn could feel its power. It was the source of the warmth and the light that had filled the labyrinth. Her heart raced as she approached the pedestal, her steps steady, despite the pounding of her heart in her chest. She reached out, her fingers trembling as they hovered above the object. It was a small, intricately carved crystal, shaped like a star, its surface glowing with an ethereal light. The crystal pulsed in her hand as if it were alive, as though it recognized her presence. For a long moment, Evelyn simply stared at it, transfixed by its beauty and its power. It felt as though this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when everything she had experienced in the labyrinth had led to this one point in time. The crystal was more than just an object, it was a symbol. A symbol of everything she had faced, everything she had learned, and everything she was about to become. With a deep breath, Evelyn picked up the crystal, feeling its warmth spread through her fingertips and into her hands. She could sense the power within it, a power that seemed to fill the very air around her. It wasn't just a physical object, it was a manifestation of something deeper, something spiritual, something she had been searching for all along. As she held the crystal, the labyrinth seemed to shift around her. The walls blurred, the light growing even brighter, until the entire room was filled with a radiance that was almost blinding. But Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She stood tall, her heart steady, knowing that this was her moment. She had made it. She had walked through the labyrinth, faced her fears, and emerged stronger, more whole than ever before. And then, as if in response to her resolve, the crystal began to hum, the sound soft at first, but growing louder, until it filled the entire chamber. The hum was not a noise, it was a vibration, a frequency that resonated deep within her soul. It was a sound she could feel, not just hear, and it filled her with a sense of peace and purpose. The light around her intensified, swirling like a vortex, and for a moment, Evelyn felt herself being lifted off the ground, as if the very force of the labyrinth's power was pulling her toward something greater. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. Suddenly, the light shifted again, and Evelyn found herself standing in a vast, open space. The labyrinth was gone, replaced by a field of soft, golden light. It stretched out before her, infinite and boundless, as though there were no end to it. The air was filled with the scent of pine and fresh snow, and a gentle breeze stirred the golden light, making it shimmer like stars in the night sky. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she looked around. She recognized this place. It was a place she had dreamed of, a place that had always felt like home. It was peaceful, serene, a place of healing and renewal. And standing before her, just beyond the light, was a figure. A silhouette, soft and warm, yet unmistakable. It was her mother. "Mom?" Evelyn whispered, her voice breaking through the silence. Her mother smiled, her face aglow with the same warmth that filled the air. She looked just as she had in Evelyn's memories, the same loving eyes, the same gentle smile. But now, there was something more in her expression, something deep and knowing, a wisdom that came from beyond this world. "I've been waiting for you," her mother said, her voice gentle, but filled with power. "You've come far, Evelyn. You've walked through the labyrinth of your heart, faced the darkness within, and now you stand in the light of your own strength. You've learned the lessons you needed to learn. And now, you are ready to move forward." Evelyn's heart swelled with emotion. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought this was just a dream, a place I'd visit when I needed to heal. But this feels real." Her mother's smile softened. "This is real, Evelyn. This is the truth you've been searching for. The labyrinth was never just a maze, it was a reflection of your own journey. Each challenge you faced, each fear you confronted, was a part of your growth. You've always had the strength within you. Now, you are ready to share that strength with the world." Tears filled Evelyn's eyes as she reached out toward her mother, but before she could speak, her mother held up her hand. "Your journey doesn't end here, Evelyn," she said. "This is only the beginning. You've learned how to face your fears, how to heal, and now you must take that wisdom with you. The world needs your light. You are ready to step into it." Evelyn nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude, peace, and resolve. She was no longer the lost girl who had stumbled into the labyrinth. She was someone new, someone who had faced her past, embraced her pain, and emerged stronger. And now, she was ready to face the world beyond, ready to take on whatever challenges awaited her. With a final smile, her mother faded into the light, her presence lingering like a soft, comforting warmth. Evelyn stood there for a moment, absorbing the peace that surrounded her, before turning toward the horizon. The labyrinth was behind her, but the lessons it had taught her would stay with her forever. As Evelyn stepped forward into the golden light, she knew that the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. And with every step she took, she would carry the strength of the labyrinth with her, lighting the way for others to follow. Chapter 10, A New Beginning. Evelyn stood on the edge of the golden light, her heart full and steady. The air around her felt alive with possibilities, as if the world itself was holding its breath in anticipation of the steps she would take next. The labyrinth, that dark, confusing place that had once felt so ominous, was now just a memory, a series of lessons that had shaped her into someone new, someone ready to face the world. But the world beyond the golden light was vast. It stretched out before her, an unknown expanse that seemed to go on forever. There were no roads, no paths, only the shimmering glow of possibility. She could feel the pull of it, the excitement of what might lie ahead, but also the weight of the uncertainty. The labyrinth had been hard, but it had offered her a sense of direction, a way forward. Now, that direction was hers to choose. As she took a deep breath, Evelyn could hear a soft rustling in the distance. It wasn't the wind or the sound of nature, it was a voice. Soft at first, like a whisper, but then clearer, more distinct. Evelyn. The voice was familiar. Her mother. But this time, the voice didn't come from a figure in the light. It seemed to emanate from the world itself, from the very air that surrounded her. Evelyn, you've learned the lessons you needed to. Now, you must share them. You must find your place in the world. It is not enough to simply heal yourself. You must help others to heal, too. The voice was gentle, but the words were filled with purpose. It was the same message Evelyn had been hearing throughout her journey. The labyrinth had never just been about her. It had always been about the world she would return to, the people she would help, and the wisdom she would share. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the words to settle in her soul. It was true. Her journey had never been meant for her alone. She had learned to face her fears, to embrace the darkness within herself, and to find the light. But now, it was time to step out of the labyrinth, to take that light with her and share it with the world. She opened her eyes, and the golden light around her seemed to brighten, as if the world itself was responding to her decision. With a deep breath, Evelyn took her first step forward, into the unknown. The ground beneath her feet was solid, but it felt as though the world was shifting with each step she took, as if the very earth was aligning with her purpose. She walked for what felt like hours, the golden light surrounding her, illuminating the path ahead. There were no obstacles, no walls, no confusion, just a sense of peace and certainty. As she walked, she felt her heart begin to open, expanding with each step. She wasn't just walking towards something, she was becoming something. The labyrinth had been a crucible, forging her into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And now, as she walked into the light, she felt ready to take on whatever awaited her in the world beyond. Eventually, the golden light began to fade, like the setting of the sun, leaving Evelyn standing in the midst of a vast field. The sky above her was a soft blue, dotted with wisps of clouds, and the air was cool but not cold. She could hear the sound of birds in the distance, and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. It was peaceful, serene, a place that felt both familiar and new, but there was something else, too. In the distance, she could see movement, a figure, walking toward her through the field. It was a man, tall and strong, with a look of quiet determination in his eyes. As he drew closer, Evelyn felt a spark of recognition. She didn't know who he was, but she knew he was someone important, someone who would be a part of her journey from this moment on. When he reached her, he stopped, standing just a few feet away, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. There was no need for words, the connection between them was immediate, deep, and unspoken. It was as though their souls recognized each other, as though they had always been meant to meet at this moment. The man smiled, a small, knowing smile. "You've made it," he said, his voice warm and steady. Evelyn nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "I've learned so much," she said. "But I don't know what to do next." The man stepped closer, his presence calming and reassuring. "What you do next is up to you," he said. "The world is waiting for you to bring what you've learned to it. There will be challenges, of course, but you're ready. The labyrinth has prepared you for this. You've faced your fears, you've faced the darkness, and you've found the light. Now, you must share that light with others." Evelyn felt a sense of peace settle in her chest. She had been afraid of the unknown, afraid of what would happen when she stepped out of the labyrinth. But now, she felt ready. The man was right. She had faced everything she needed to face. And now, it was time to step into the world, to share the lessons she had learned, and to help others find their own way. "You're not alone," the man said, as if reading her thoughts. "You will have help along the way. There will be others who will walk with you, who will learn from you, and who will help you on your journey. You will build a community, a family, of those who have faced the same darkness, the same challenges. Together, you will heal the world." Evelyn smiled, the weight of his words sinking deep into her soul. She had never truly been alone. The labyrinth had shown her that. It had been a place of transformation, a place where she had found herself, but it had also been a place where she had learned that healing is a shared experience. No one walks their journey alone. With that understanding, Evelyn felt a new sense of purpose. She was ready to embrace the world, to bring her light, her wisdom, and her compassion to those who needed it most. She wasn't afraid anymore. The darkness might still exist, but now, she knew she could face it. She had already walked through the labyrinth. As the man turned to walk beside her, Evelyn took her place at his side, ready for whatever came next. The world was vast, but it no longer seemed so daunting. She had everything she needed within her: strength, courage, and the love that had guided her through the labyrinth. Now, it was time to share that love with the world. Together, they walked into the field, the sky above them stretching out like a canvas, waiting for the story they would write together. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. Chapter 11, The Journey's End. Evelyn and the man walked side by side through the vast field, the sun dipping lower in the sky, painting the landscape in warm shades of orange and gold. With each step, she felt a deeper sense of peace settle over her, a feeling she had never quite known before. The journey she had embarked upon had been long and arduous, but it had led her to this moment, to the understanding that she was not just a survivor of her past, but a beacon for those who would come after her. The man at her side, whose presence had been a guiding light throughout this final phase of her journey, turned to her with a quiet smile. "You've learned more than you realize," he said. "The labyrinth was not just about facing your own darkness. It was about seeing the darkness in others and learning to help them heal." Evelyn nodded, her mind reflecting on the many lessons the labyrinth had taught her. It had been a place of reflection, of confronting her deepest fears, but it had also given her a new way of seeing the world, a world full of people who carried burdens of their own. She had learned that true healing wasn't just about fixing herself. It was about understanding others, showing empathy, and sharing the strength she had found within herself. "I understand now," she said softly. "Healing is a shared experience. We can't do it alone. We must help each other." The man nodded. "Exactly. And now, you are ready. The world awaits you, Evelyn. You are the light they need." As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, the field around them seemed to glow in the twilight, as if the very earth itself was responding to their words. Evelyn could feel the weight of what was to come, the responsibility, the challenge, but also the incredible opportunity to help others. The labyrinth had been a trial, but now, it was time to live out the lessons it had taught her. They reached the edge of the field, where the grass met a small, winding path that led toward a distant village. Evelyn could hear the soft murmur of voices, the sound of life going on, of people living and laughing and carrying on with their days. This was the world she had been called to, a world in need of the light she carried within her. The man stopped at the edge of the path and turned to face her. "You don't have to walk alone," he said. "There are others who will help you. There are others who have also faced the darkness. You will find them. And together, you will make a difference." Evelyn felt her heart swell. She was no longer afraid. She had walked through the labyrinth, confronted her deepest fears, and come out the other side stronger than she had ever imagined. But she didn't have to do this alone. She had learned that the most important part of healing was community, the support and strength we give each other. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." The man smiled one last time, his eyes warm with pride. "You've done the hard work, Evelyn. Now, go. The world is waiting for you." With a final glance at the man, Evelyn stepped onto the path, her heart full of purpose. The journey wasn't over, it had only just begun. She was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the lessons from the labyrinth and the light of compassion that burned within her. As she walked down the path toward the village, she felt a deep sense of belonging. This was where she was meant to be. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: she was ready to help others heal. She would walk alongside them, guide them through their own darkness, and help them find the light she had found within herself. The world was full of possibilities. And now, Evelyn was ready to embrace them all. The end. Thank you for taking this journey with Evelyn. Her story is one of transformation, healing, and the power of shared experience. Now, with a labyrinth behind her, Evelyn steps into the world, ready to help others face their darkness and find their light.